All right, let's get started here. So this week it's just going to be coding. Last week I did a bit of a new thing where I talked some about some of the applications. Well, not really applications, some of the properties of Arweave that I think are interesting. I'm going to continue that series. Next week I'm going to do that more and explore some of the implications of that. But those videos take more work to prepare, and I would not get other things done if I was doing them every week. So this week doing just more of a casual coding session. I have a few things I think will be interesting to look at, exploring XTDB, Metabase, and just seeing what we can do with the data that we've been saving. So I was just doing a quick look. One thing I realized is that, well, I'll just run this. So this is my local XTDB, which is catching up with the transaction log. I'm actually wondering if something's not quite set up right with my checkpointing, or if I know, or if it's not, or if there's something that works differently about it than I realized. Maybe there's a node ID in there. I don't know. I got to look at it because I thought that the checkpointing would bring me a little more up to date. But anyway, my node is catching up with the transaction log right now. But given the fact that I drastically reduced the number of documents and transactions I'm writing, it doesn't take that long to catch up. Okay, so let's see here. I was also just checking to see if my indexer is still running. See where we at. 570. Where's Arweave at? Oh yeah. So cool. So this is good validation of this approach for what I'm trying to do. So if you remember my initial approach, I was writing tons and tons of documents. I had trouble keeping that indexer running within the. By the way, the indexer is just a thing I call this process. It's like reading from Arweave and writing to XTDB. That's not actually like an XTDB term or anything. So initially I was writing tons of documents per block, and I think that's totally valid schema, but not for the amount of resources I want to put into it. So I switched to, I think I'm just writing two. Let me double check that. Just writing two documents. Yeah, currently just writing two documents. Actually, that's in the top level, isn't it? Where's the transaction? Yeah, here it is. Just writing two documents per Arweave block, and the blocks are it targets every 2 minutes. I think in practice right now it's closer to 900 per day as opposed to 720. But anyway, pretty manageable number of documents per day, and a relatively light indexing load. But I think the structure that I'm using will still let me extract a lot of interesting data from those limited documents. It's just that you have to make sure you're querying correctly so you're not doing like scans over the whole thing. Okay, so wrote some notes to keep myself on course here. So the first thing that we need to do, I'll go over to Metabase. So we're going to spend a little bit of time, hopefully, if things work out well. This one. Yeah, no tables. So, and let me double check here. So I'll go to my admin. We're going to spend some time in Metabase, hopefully exploring this data. Sync database schema. Rescan fields. Yeah, I don't know if I would see out. I might not even see if there's an error here with that. But we'll just exit admin. So admin, go back to Arweave. No database tables. Okay, that's to be expected because I haven't loaded the SQL schema in yet. So we can do that. Let me quickly look over this. Yeah, I have the height restriction. Probably fine. I think I'll leave that. Let's see, do all these fields still exist? Yes. Yes, this looks pretty sane to me. If not, we can debug it, and that will be interesting to see too, just how you go about debugging a SQL schema in XT. Okay, so let me get that up and split here. And by the way, I'm in the midst of transitioning from Emacs with Doom Emacs into NeoVim. I'm not fully proficient in my NeoVim setup yet, so I'm still in Emacs for the videos. However, that means that I'm like halfway in between. My brain's like a mess with keystrokes, so hopefully I'm still fluid enough in that transition to do okay in Emacs for the purposes of this video. The reason, by the way, is so I do a lot of visual selections. Well, a few different reasons. I started out my programming career in Vim. Well, actually, I started out in Borland Turbo C++, but not that long after that, I went into Vim. And then eventually, when I started using Clojure, the Vim ecosystem for Clojure just wasn't as good, and so I started using variants of Emacs that have Vim bindings. So I started with Spacemacs, and then went to Doom Emacs when I was frustrated with Spacemacs getting bloated. But it's just a little flakier than I like, and it's a little bit higher latency than I like. So I really like low latency, super fast interfaces, and that is just not Emacs right now. So nothing against Emacs. I love both Vim and Emacs, but I think that for me the balance of what I want has shifted to NeoVim, and I think NeoVim has proven itself now that I trusted enough to invest in it. So when it first came out, I wasn't sure what would happen with it. So a little digression there. Okay, so let's see. Let's load this. So what do we call this? We call this I should rename that. I think I'm just going to call this table blocks, because in terms of what I'm exposing to Metabase, there really is there's no other blocks table I would expose. Like, I'm not going to expose the source blocks, so I'll just expose this as a blocks table. All right, evaluate that, and then over here, yeah, just make sure this looks right. Block schema. All right, so see that. Let me reprint that. Yep, looks like what I'm expecting. So let's go ahead and load it, and hopefully this will work. Okay, so we have transacted it. Let me see where I am here. Have I caught up fully? I think so. What's our current block? Yeah, so we are fully caught. Oop. And yeah, this is my NeoVim setup. Switch to the wrong i3 window here, or i3 space. Okay, so now in theory, if we go into Metabase, let's go look at admin databases, strong pool. Oh, no, not strong pool. Arweave. At some point I might show that too. That's kind of interesting. So strong pool Arweave. Okay. Hopefully we don't have to dig into any ECS logs and this worked the first time, but if not, we'll see. Arweave. Uh-oh. No tables. Okay, we do have to dig into ECS here, see what's going on. The indexer. No. Wouldn't be on the indexer side. It would be on the Metabase side. Okay. 30 seconds, 5 minutes. Actually, let's look at this in CloudWatch. This is definitely going to motivate me to get all these logs into something that's not terrible, a little bit faster, because CloudWatch is pretty terrible. All right, what does it say here? Cache field values in Dremio database Arweave. Sync tables could be interesting. I wonder if there's actually a way to view these logs in Metabase too. Sync, yeah, sync metadata. Let's try, okay. Oh man, I always forget the name of that thing. So there's here. I'll have to look it up. There's a command line tool, but like I use it sporadically. Oh man, I bet if I search for crux SQL CLI. I bet I could find it by port too. So 15.0. Yeah, there we go. Corsair. Yeah. Okay. Is this a thing? Oh no. Select star, or just let's do select star from blocks limit 1. Okay, so the table is definitely there. Let's see, order by height descending. Oh, I think I've got that. 1. Yeah, okay, so table is there. Oh, this was a change too. I should mention this. So if you remember last time, I ran into this thing where you actually can't put this literal into the closure without that H prefix, because it doesn't like the just a number, which makes sense, because if you want to destructure this or remove the namespace portion, number literal in a number is evaluated as itself in closure, so I put an H prefix for these for height, and I think I did ID for the hashes, so it's either H dash or ID dash for the symbols or the keywords there. Other than that, not really a lot of changes from last time. Most have been focused on other things. Okay, so the schema's there. It worked. Question is, why isn't it showing up in Metabase? So a couple possibilities. One is it just hadn't really applied yet, because there is, it's a async application of transactions on each thing reading from the transaction log. So that's one possibility. The other possibility is there's just some weirdness in how the SQL thing behaves, and restarting it might fix it. So I may do that. Though, yeah. I'm a little wary of doing that, because I don't know if my checkpointing isn't working the way I expect. It might have to catch up too. Yeah, nothing there. not the end of the world if I can't get it going in Metabase, although the Metabase, seeing it there would lead to a lot nicer visualizations. So let me try. First I'll do the sort of easiest thing, which is I'll just kill my Metabase task. Wait for that to come back up, just in case there's some weirdness with like Metabase interacting with XT. Then the next thing I'll do is kill the indexer, and even if it has to catch up, it'll probably catch up partway through this stream, and I can come back to it. Important thing is, though, the schema seems fine, so let's just do this. How many of these do we have in here? Count star. No need for a limit on that. No order by. Trying to think. Count star, divide that by 5. Does that make sense? Seems low to me. What's the min? Oops, min timestamp. Do I not have a timestamp? I do have a timestamp. What are you talking about? What did I type wrong? Min timestamp. Oh, I wonder if that's a did you mean quote timestamp? Maybe. I don't know what the quoting is here, so maybe I did. Thanks. It's treating as a literal string. Interesting. Backticks? Is it backticks? So I think it might be treating timestamp as a keyword. Those are some choice error messages there. Remote runtime exception error while executing select from blocks, parse lexical error, blah, blah, blah. What happens if I do this one? What does that one tell me? Okay, well, let's do this. Calcite SQL syntax. I am just outputting it as timestamp, right? Yeah. This might be a learning that this is not a good name for that field. We'll see. All right, quote. The quotes. Identifiers. Quoted identifiers start and end with double quotes. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical here. Let's do order by height ascending. Limits 1. What's our limit there? 784468. 784468. What's the timestamp? See, it's right there. I wonder. Okay, so is it a capital letters thing? It is. Okay. Well, there we go. 10:08. Yeah, I wonder. I'll have to do some exploration here. I almost wonder if I've missed blocks. It's fine. I can go back and recover them. I'll probably have a process that goes through and looks for gaps and fills in anything. Haven't spent a lot of time trying to make the process as reliable as possible. But that 08 makes sense. That would have been, it's like a week ago. So, looks more or less right. Close enough. Close enough for this stream anyway. let's do another thing. So let's divide. I hope this makes for interesting watching. So once I get into this stuff, it's like, oh, let me see what all these things are. Okay, so oops, not max, and count. So what I'm curious about is yeah, so in order for that to be right, I think, what if I put does it do this as a fraction if I do that? Yeah, there we go. In order for that to be right, I think the block rate would have to be significantly lower than I'm expecting right now. So I'm guessing it's not quite right and that there's some gaps in there. That's fine. That doesn't really matter for what we're doing. Okay, Metabase should have restarted by now. So let's see what we got. Oh, and if you are watching and you just have any questions or comments or just like stuff you want me to poke around in, go ahead and shoot me a message in here, because this is pretty casual stream today. I'm just gonna explore some things, and hopefully we'll get some pretty pictures out of Metabase by the end here. I think there's a good chance. Okay, so my guess is going to be that this is not going to work. That's just sort of the easiest thing to try initially. Yeah. Oh, no, it did work. Okay, cool. I'll have to dig into that a little more. I wonder if it's, the things could be as some sort of stateful thing in Metabase, though I think that's unlikely. The thing that could be going on is just more asynchrony than I'm expecting with the application of that schema on the in the indexer. So who knows? Who knows? Yeah, so it's taking a little while to return my blocks here. Not too surprising. Probably none of that is really in memory at the moment. Let's see, we can look at task definitions. Where is it? Indexer? No. ECS interface drives me a little nuts. Okay. We want the engine. No, I'm sorry, the indexer. Want the metrics. Just curious, we might be able to notice some of the CPU utilization here. Okay, okay. We have a magic summarize button. Let's do it. Let's summarize it. Summarize transaction count. What's that going to do? All right, so I should go back to my notes. I think I did a very poor intro job today. So anyway, we're doing the prep. We got the SQL schema in there. Oh, mention new video. Good thing I write notes for myself. Yeah, so last time, like I said, I went over the properties of Arweave a bit. I'll just throw this into your videos, throw this into the channel. So I cut that out and made that a separate video. I'm going to make a whole series of these. There's going to be a playlist. Get a shareable link. Yes, I want that. So here's a link to that. If you watched the last stream, you already heard it, but I did cut out a standalone one, and I have a playlist. I'm slowly becoming less of a YouTube creator noob here. The playlist is Arweave for Collective Intelligence, and I want to go over a whole range of topics about using Arweave as a system to build tools for collective intelligence on top of, and just some of the properties that make Arweave, I think, good for that purpose. So, yeah, that's the mention the video. Query prerequisites. So the things I want to do is just explore this data a little more in Metabase. We're sort sort of dug straight into that because once they get in there, it's just like, oh, what queries can I run? In the schema, we have this tags summary. So I want to make this queryable in SQL, and I think the way to do that is writing a little function that flattens this out, and then we can put that into a query that's part of the SQL schema. So we're going to do that, and then I wrote down a few queries I think will be interesting. I might start with this one before we get into this tag stuff, this miner rewards versus Arweave spend. I think that's just kind of an interesting Arweave analysis query. And I don't need to do any flattening for that. And then the other ones I want to do is just grouping tags by block plus tags, and then looking at the total transactions for certain tags, and then total data size. And might be other things that fall out, but those are the top ones that spring to mind. So let's go look at Metabase again, and we can. So what do we got here? We have the TX count. Oh, it's doing like a summary of like. I don't think that's very useful. This is kind of interesting. There's a fair number of empty blocks on Arweave, and I think. Yeah, I would hope to see those go down over time, because I don't think those are representative of what the chain is actually. I suspect people are just mining empty blocks here, in a not particularly friendly way. Oh, I didn't want to do that. Done. Stop. Go away. Okay, so. Let's just write this as a SQL query. I hope to get a little better at using Metabase in its native way, but for right now, I'm more proficient in just writing SQL than navigating the Metabase UI. Okay, so let's do this last one, this miner rewards versus AR spend. So what do we need for this? Okay, so in here we have total transaction reward. Let's sum that up first. Or just plot it first. Let's do that. Okay, so from blocks total TX reward. Probably have to quote that. I may change those to underscores. I thought that XT automatically changed those to underscores. I thought I had read that somewhere, but maybe that was something they went back on or decided is a bad idea, or I'm just totally misremembering, which is completely possible. So order this by height, because height basically equals time. Do that ascending. So this will, I guess we'll include height in here too, so I don't need to quote height. So this will give us height and total transaction reward, and what the transaction reward is. Oh, you know, one thing I'm missing, I'll have to do that via calculation. So one thing I am missing is the calculation for what the inflation bonus is per block. So Arweave rewards for miners are composed of, I'll just put a little comment in here. So miner reward equals inflation. So that's just, you know, like we'll just use Bitcoin as an example. Bitcoin has this supply that is fixed, and you're sort of asymptotically, I don't say that word very much, approaching the max supply of Bitcoin over time, and you know, as you get closer and closer, the miners get less and less. So Arweave also inflation. There we go. Arweave also has that. That's the inflation bonus in Arweave. But over time, more and more of the miner rewards in Arweave will come from people spending to store in it. So there's the inflation reward, which rewards, you know, the early adopters to the to the chain, and then there's the reward from people paying for data storage. And unlike Bitcoin, where the transaction rewards, they're just like little premiums to reward miners. So they're not that sizable compared to the inflation. In Arweave, if you're storing data, there can actually be a decent amount of money to store data on Arweave. Decent amount of AR tokens, but whatever. It's money originally. So the transaction rewards are actually decently large. And I think one thing that's kind of interesting to look at, which is where we're trying to end up with this, is so you can look at how much miners are getting versus how much is being spent in the chain. And let me finish out this equation. So 0.2 times TX rewards. So yeah, so 20% of the transaction rewards go to miners, and then the other 80% goes to the endowment, which is the thing that funds Arweave's existence in the future. So Arweave is permanent storage, so you need to have some way to pay for that. So a large fraction of this reward goes into the endowment that is drawn upon if the network detects that the other rewards, like the 0.2 of the transaction rewards and the inflation, are not enough to cover an estimate of the miner's cost to store data. So I'll probably do a whole video on that at some point, but suffice it to say, a fraction of the transaction rewards, which can be sizable, goes to miners, and then inflation. So I think a thing that's interesting to look at is whether this number, how this number here, so this, like how the inflation compares to the total transaction rewards, and how the combination of inflation plus transaction rewards compares to the amount going to the endowment. Kind of think of it as a measure of adoption to some degree, because if there's a lot of data going into Arweave, eventually the transaction rewards outpace the inflation. I think that would be a really good sign for the network. And I don't know where this is. This is not something it's the kind of thing I'm in part making this database so I can keep track of. Oh no, what does it say here? Parse error height. Really? Let's go back to the console. Limit 1. Okay. What about... Oops, no. Okay, we'll just kill that. Okay, height and total TX reward. Oh, it could be this thing actually. Let me get rid of that. Let me just run that, yeah. Nope. All right, I'll go back here. Total TX reward. Interesting. Okay, what's different? Let me copy this. Oh, silly. Yeah, these errors are not super readable. It probably says it very clearly in here somewhere. From block, parse failed, height was expecting. Yeah, it does say it. It's kind of difficult to read them. Probably get better at that over time. Okay, and these are denominated in Winstons, which is the smallest unit of measurement in Arweave. Let's see. Look up. Oh, I have this in code too. Let me go find it in code. So it's in. Where do I have it? Should be in, I think, protocol. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to get this into units I understand. Okay. So if we divide that, nice. Yeah, some of those are getting sizable actually. And let's do this. So we divide that, oops, sorry, my bad. If we divide that, so that's dividing it by Winston's to get it into AR. And then so it's 20%, so we multiply by 5, and that gets you the total amount of Arweave AR tokens spent per block. And I'll show you where we can confirm that I'm doing the right thing with my calculations here. Yeah, there's some doozies in there. That's see, Arweave is what, about 50 right now? Actually, let's just do that. Let's turn this into dollars. I don't need another parentheses. So 5 times Arweave price. What is it right now? Obviously, this is not representative of the price at the transaction, although I could put that in the database at some point. That would be a super interesting thing to include. I will probably try to do that. I just need to find a good, oracle of some sort. Probably a boring one, and that I'll just use like CoinGecko API or something like that. So 51.57, close enough for right now. Oops. All right. So what do we have in U.S. dollars? Very excited that I'm getting to the point where we can do these queries in a reasonable way. Oh no, rounding necessary. No, let's just make it even. We'll just say it's $50. It's not actually accurate, but I'll have to figure out. So total TX reward. I think I have that in decimal in the database. I don't know how the total TX reward. Yeah, it's decimal. So I don't know how the rounding is working here. I wonder if I have to. Well, whatever. I'm not going to worry about it right now. That's just an open question for me. It's like, how does the numeric yeah, how do decimals work in XT SQL? I will figure it out. Yeah, so a really interesting number to record would be just this number for the block at the time of the block. So let's do a sum. See what the total spend is over that time period. I can't do a sum. What do you mean? Oh, because it's yeah. Duh. Can't have the height in there if we're doing the sum. I'll back this out in a second. I think what I want to do is I can do yeah, that's a decent amount. 194,000 spent storing. I mean, I'm sure that not actually accurate because that's going to, I think it's still a small amount compared to the inflation bonus. Let's see. Well, okay. So inflation bonus. I have a calculation for that somewhere. Protocol. Yeah, inflation. So let's back this out. So we got height, sum, get our sum out of here. Let's do this. So we'll take the total transaction reward times 5 minus, I don't really need the parentheses there, I'm just doing it for clarity, minus total transaction reward, so that's the call this, I guess I could derive this from the increase in the endowment pool too. I think we have that. Oh, but I'd have to, yeah, so there's a reward pool. That is the amount of the endowment over time. Again, this is paying for the future storage of the data. I could derive it from this, but I'd have to do some fancy query that takes the delta between each block, and that seems like work. So, but I can use this to check my calculations, which will be good. Okay, so this is gonna we'll call this what? Endowment. I don't know why I'm doing capitals, but I guess I'm just trying to be consistent. Endowment contribution. So we multiply by 5 to get the total reward, including the endowment, and then we subtract the total reward, which is the amount that goes to the miner. And we'll just leave this. Yeah, and then we'll take that whole thing and we'll multiply that. So we'll turn this into AR just so it's easier to understand. Okay, so get our Winstons per AR. And I'll get rid of the double parentheses. I assume this follows normal arithmetic precedence rules. So that's the endowment contribution, and then the total TX reward. For clarity, so multiply that, and we'll call this as miner reward. I could just leave it named the same thing, but I think it's a little clearer. So okay, we got height, we got the endowment contribution. Let's flip the order of these. Makes a little more sense to me. And then we'll add in inflation here in a second. Hopefully, if we can get the math right. I should put a limit on that. I don't need to be returning all those results. Limit 10. I'm doing the wrong thing here, aren't I? Don't want to multiply, I want to divide. It's like looking at extremely large numbers. I don't know that that limit actually does much to speed up the query because it might be applying it after. But the way this the way this schema is structured, querying all the blocks is not going to be too crazy. It's only going to be, it's going to be millions, but like it's kind of limited by the block production rate. Okay, so let's see. Just a quick sanity check here. Do these numbers look sane? They look pretty sane to me. All right, let's see if we can get the inflation in there. So let's do this. So Genesis tokens. I will probably at some point also, I don't know. I have so many video ideas that I should stop saying I'm going to do these, because there's no way I'm going to do all of them in the near term. Like maybe eventually I get to everything I want to do, but it would be interesting to just do like a detailed video that goes over the tokenomics of Arweave and like how the tokens were allocated, all that stuff, because it's not like it's that information is hidden, but it's not. If you asked our Arweave team, they just tell you. But there's no page that I know of that says like, here's exactly what this stuff looks like, and it'd probably be useful to have sort of a canonical video on that. Okay. I will also here. Let's just do it right now. So. Let me show where you find this stuff. So again, like none of this information is hidden. It's just the yellow paper talks about it some, and the best place I think to go is you just look at the code. And it's a little confusing. This is the calculation for the upcoming hard fork, where they're switching away from floating point to doing decimal math, and they put the like divisor, denominator, those things into the blocks. But the easier version to look at, and it's fine for our purposes, is this pre-25 fork one, where it's floating point math, and yeah, it depends. It just depends on Erlang's floating point to know exactly what this does. But we're not trying to be that precise. Okay, so we got Winston per AR. I'm going to multiply that by 0.2 times Genesis tokens. Yeah. Okay, let's see if we can get this into our SQL here. The translation of this is basically the inflation halves per year. Okay, so I think it's going to be easier for me to do it here. So we got Winston's per AR. Okay, so we ultimately, you know what, we don't even need that. We don't need the Winston's per AR because we're doing everything in AR ultimately. So 0.2 times Genesis tokens, and that's just getting us, I think, the okay, let's do that. So the Genesis tokens times 0.2 times divided by blocks per year. Okay, math power 2 to the calcite SQL syntax. So we gotta look at what the functions we have available here. Math, do we have math functions? Calcite math. Calcite language. Need to know power. Numeric. 1, 2. Raised. Yeah. Okay, so let's do that. So we got, sorry, I'm doing poor job navigating my screens here. So we got power 2 to the what? Zero minus the height. So we got 0. Actually, we can just do minus height. Whatever. We'll do it this way. 0 minus height times blocks per year. Yeah, I guess we'll do that version. Height. Oh wait, which way are we doing this? So we're doing the negative height and then blocks per year. Okay. So block every 2 minutes, so 30. Yep, 30 times 24 times. I think it would be, well, no, that's fine. I think the 30, putting 30 in there makes it less evident what that's actually doing. But not overly so. 30 times 24 times 365. Okay. Again, apologies for my not awesome navigation of my screens here. Okay, so we got the negative height. Really hope I get this right the first time, because don't relish debugging this thing. Okay, and then the log, is that just, it's just regular log, right? What does our ln2 math log.js? Okay, it's natural log. Okay, so that means ln, natural log, log 10. Okay. ln 2. Okay, so let's see. We got 20% of this times 2 to the power of this times the natural log, and then what? Divide that whole thing by the blocks per year. Okay, let's see. I know roughly what this number should be, so I think it'll be clear quickly if I got this right. Hopefully there's no syntax errors. No. Okay, let's see. Let's just take this. Let me just put this into the into here, and we'll just do height negative. Let me put it in the current height, because then I'll know right away. Because I know ballpark what it should be right now. Oh wait, so it did. It worked here. Yeah, and that's the right number. So, okay, the formula is right. I'll probably bake this right into the block attributes too. Do it in the closure as opposed to, okay, so what is it saying here? Let's find error. Is it like a type thing? It might be a type thing. Like maybe I need to turn height, mining reward, row count. Wow, these are hard to read. Unable to XTDB to enumerable converter. Is it the... It might be that I need to store height as a decimal in order for this to work. Let's try. Maybe I can explicitly decimal. So like a cast I can do. Convert value type. Okay, let's give that a shot. So convert. First, I guess let's do this. Let's just throw, before I do anything too crazy, we'll take out height and we'll just throw the current. This is not going to give me anything sane in terms of, just going to give me a constant. I just want to see it run. Oh, it still has trouble with that. Why? Why does it have trouble with that? Maybe, let's take this. Having a hard time in Metabase parsing out the errors here. Unable to convert. This might be an argument overall for just doing more of this enclosure, and I don't even have to store this. I could just compute it in the data log query. Unable to implement XTDB to enumerable converter. To enumerable. I find that very puzzling. Well, you know what? I'm going to take this, throw it in there, so I have a copy. Let's take this piece by piece and see where it breaks down. Power to okay, interesting. Check and see if that one works. Okay. Well, close. I don't know if I want to dig into... So I think the solution to this... I mean, there may be a solution in SQL too, but I don't know that that's... I don't know that it's worth trying to do it that way. Let me one more time just take this. I'm pretty sure that's exactly what I pasted in there now. Okay, so let's put this in here. Whatever. Yeah, so I don't fully understand what the difference is. I mean, it can execute that. To enumerable. That's really interesting. I don't know if that's a bug or if it's something about the way I'm constructing the query. Let me quickly check the chat here in case anyone has... Nope. No one there suggesting things. So, I can tell you, I mean, we can... Let's just plug the value in. You know what? Actually, let's do this. So, the way I think I will solve this, which I don't think I'll do on the stream, or if I do, it will be next time, is to put the calculation in here. So I can put the inflation in here by doing, I'll do something like inflation, and then, yeah, I would just pass the let me look. Have examples, identity. Yeah. So it'd be something like height. It's just completely computed off of height. And like that, I forget exactly. I'm still not fully, something like that. It might be like, it's either like that or like my switch between NeoVim and Emacs is really messing with my head when I try to do the structural editing. Oops, missing an F. Might be like that. I don't fully have the syntax down yet. I recently realized this is, I think that they use the exact same syntax in Datomic and XT for this. It's just not a thing I've done. Like, I don't know. I did a lot of DataScript back a few years ago, and I'm not sure that they actually had this evaluating function stuff in Datalog at the time. Anyway, I haven't used this syntax much before, so I'm still learning it. But anyway, it's going to be something like this, where you just apply a function over here, except it'll be fully namespaced, and then pull the value out over here, and that will work better, I think, because then I don't have to worry about the vagaries of what the SQL is doing. But what I could do in the meantime, since I happen to have this and that part works, let me just grab, I'll just put a placeholder value in there, because it doesn't, it changes relatively rapidly, but on the course of a week it's not changing that much. So we'll just take, we'll say it's 3.6, close enough. So we'll say 3.6 as inflation bonus. I may change the terms around how I'm labeling things. I think another thing I'm going to do is I will use underscores. It's just a lot, I don't know. The dashes don't really sit well with me in SQL. So I'll probably change those all to underscores, which is just a SQL schema change. Thankfully, I don't have to change the schema in the database. Okay, so let's do this. We'll take, let's do this one. I guess this is a good reason to call it. I'm not going to subtract either. I'll say this one is the as total reward. No, I shouldn't say total reward. Total fees. Let's put it that way. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure I finished saying what. But yeah, the best place to look for all this stuff is in the code. You do have to search around a little bit, like inflation's and inflation, fees. What's the name of that one? I've looked at it before. Yeah, pricing. There's a bunch of stuff in pricing, and then you have to find, like, okay, there's constants that you have to look up. So yeah, it's all here in the source code, which is, good thing about open source here. That's how I always do that to find the canonical stuff, because it's just not not as well documented as I would like. Yeah, so let's take this. So that's total fees. And then total fees. We'll do that. Minus 3.6. So just using our constant there. We will call this what? This is what I'm trying to get at here is the inflation bonus versus the transaction. So what would I call this? It's not like the net anything. It's the I don't know what a good name for it is. I'll just say inflation versus fees. Not the greatest name, but what I'm getting at is, okay, are our fees more than the inflation? Because I think that's kind of a significant metric for Arweave. When you see that over time, I think that's a really good sign for the network, because it means that a lot of the it means that the usage is really taking off compared to the inflation incentive, inflation bonus, whatever. What rounding necessary? Why would that be? Do I have to say decimal? Is that a thing? Let's see. Let me do convert value type. So let's do convert decimal. I don't know if the type they expect here is a identifier or not an identifier. If it's decimal, like quoted or not. I guess we'll find out. Again, the conclusion I'm coming to doing all this is like, oh, I should put as much of this as possible into Clojure because it's just gonna be a lot nicer to work with there, which is fine. I mean, it's okay. Let's do say 3. doesn't really tell me exactly what I want, but whatever. I'll replace this with the real values as I implement them. I think the thing I'm learning here is, I don't know, maybe I don't like calcite, or I don't like I don't love the calcite XT integration. I mean, clearly it's great because I can do this. Which I wouldn't be able to. Oh, you know what we could do? Let's do it this way. So we can do. Oh, I'm lazy. I don't want it. Never mind. I was gonna say. No, I guess that's not hard. Let's just do this. So you can take this. And put it over here, right? So you can do this. Say 3, 6. This is gonna be pretty close. It's not. Yeah, that'll be pretty close, and then we don't have to worry about the rounding or whatever. But yeah, I think the thing I'm learning here is that there's just some rough edges around the integration of XT and calcite to do SQL. It's great because I couldn't do this at all if that didn't exist. Like I couldn't get this data into, but it pushes me into Metabase. I should finish my sentences. But it definitely pushes me in the direction of, oh yeah, let me just implement as much of this as possible in Clojure, and then just do aggregation and more simple things on the SQL side. Or maybe I don't even know if the aggregation part is true, because I could do a lot of that on the Clojure side also. All right, super interesting. So we're getting some that are just monster transactions where the fees really are more than the inflation bonus. And if we were to sum this up, I think that's going to be a really interesting number. I would expect the inflation bonus to be accounting for most of this still, but I don't know. Let's find out. Oh my goodness. Okay, yeah. That makes total sense though. That's just me not thinking about the thing I'm doing. I'm just going to make a copy of that so I have it. And let's do sum. Yep, we'll keep the name of that. So if I want to do a sum, clearly I can't have those other fields in there unless I'm doing a group by. Total TX reward times 5. Yeah, it looks right to me. Let's do it. So this is over a 1 week period here. Very satisfying to see this whole setup producing usable data. Yeah, let's turn that into times. Just get a feel for how much more of the yeah, okay, interesting. I forget what our total was. I want to say it was 700,000. So overall, the majority of the miner inflation is accounting for a lot in the network, I guess is the short way to say that. Okay, let me go back to a previous version. Debating how much time I want to continue spending on this versus doing something else, but I think we should at least plot this, right? So let's take this, take the limit off, and we should be able to get a nice chart out of this. Number table. I should be able to do a bar chart. Maybe I gotta wait for it to finish in order to pick that. Okay, hopefully now. Yeah, okay, bar chart. So height on the X and on the Y, we want. Sure, I'll do this as if this is the final. I mean, inflation bonus is just a constant in this query, but it will be replaced by a real thing in the future. Minor reward and endowment contribution. And let's see, display. So this is doing, I want them stacked. And let's do, well, I think I'll leave it at that. I think I want to maybe, I could do some grouping of this. Like I could group it, I could do it by time, or I can do it by some number of blocks. It's probably better to do it by time because the block rate is going to vary some. So that might give a kind of a misleading view. Yeah, so I'll go ahead and save this. It's not finished, but it's getting there. So this would be, just call it block rewards. Don't want to overthink the naming here. Yeah, sure. I guess I'll call it Arweave. Block rewards. No, not now. I will make a dashboard for this eventually. Fun stuff. So we have some big spikes and a nice average activity there. Grouping would definitely make this clearer in terms of like what the balance is. With all these spikes, it's a little hard to intuit what the average is. But that's super fun. Okay, you know, didn't get as far as I was planning here. I hope this is interesting. It's definitely been more on the SQL metabase side than the closure side, so hopefully that's still interesting to folks. So this, I think it would make this a little too long to start digging into this. I may do this. We'll see. I don't know. I may do this offline and then just go over it next time. I'll tell you what I had in mind here, though, which is hopefully next time, too, I'll be fully converted into NeoVim and my navigation will be a little more fluid. Okay, so we have this tag summary, which, oh, I guess I don't have a, I should make schemas for some of the things going into Crux so that I'm sorry, XT. I did so well. I think that was the first time I messed it up in the stream. So I can talk about them because it's really hard to like look at this slightly janky function and know what's coming out of it. So the tag summary is basically, if I'm remembering this right, it's the tag, it's on a per block basis, it's the tag name and then a map that has the total reward, total quantity, and total data size associated with that. So what we need here, I think, to use that in a query, last time I tried doing some destructuring stuff, but I don't think that the destructuring I was trying to do really makes sense. That was me not really fully comprehending the syntax that you use to use functions in XT and all the other things that use this flavor of data log. So I think what we want is a single function that takes in that tag summary map, and then you maybe tell it, I'm trying to think what you want out of it. So I'm not exactly sure, but basically it's going to output a sequence of things that are then turned into individual relations. So it's going to kind of expand the set of relations returned for each block. So instead of getting like one relation out in this sort of simple join, you're going to get a set of relations out, one component of which will be like tag name and whatever value you're pulling out. And maybe you specify, maybe it like pulls out all the values. I have to think about that a little bit. Yeah, I think that would be the way to go, right? So it's going to give you a sequence of, I'm not sure what the right word to use there is, a sequence of vectors, maybe. I was trying to think of like, should I say tuples or relations in the query? But yeah, like a sequence of vectors, just in terms of the closure return value of this function, that are tag name and then these things. So total reward, total quantity, total data size. And then you're going to, yeah, let me just write this out. I think talking about it, it makes it, it's a little hard to follow just verbally. So it's going to be like expand tags summary tx tags summary, and then on this side it's going to be so tag name total reward. Well, I think there's a count too, isn't there? Pretty sure. Yeah, there's a count. Like tag count, tag total reward. I won't type these all out, but etc. for all the values that are in there. And I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, you can just leave out arbitrary things here. So I could do a underscore for the stuff I don't want. I think that's the simplest way. I'll probably try to implement that and just get it working. I'm not sure that watching me go through that is much better than me doing it and then explaining it afterwards. But that's the direction. And then that gets us pretty far in terms of being able to query the whole structure. I think the one thing that's missing, I put some to-dos in here. One thing I realized, I wasn't 100% certain if XT indexed vectors at the top level. It does. So if you have something that's like TX data sizes, was basically a vector of data sizes, it indexes everything in that vector. And so I took these out because I don't want to expand the number of things I'm indexing at the top level to include transaction data. I want to make that expansion via computation at query time. And then I'll just always rely on doing sort of restricting my query to a set of blocks that I know, so I can sort of limit the computation. Because right now, I'd rather do a little more computation at query time versus expanding the size of my indexes. And I want to make sure that my index size is a known thing based on the number of blocks and isn't a function of transactions. So I disabled these, and I think instead I'm going to put a map at the top level that is like a map of transaction IDs to some of these things, so like data size and data quantities. And then I'll be able to do the same sort of thing where I expand that at query time, but I don't have to deal with creating indexes. Again, this might not be the right trade-off for something you're doing. I think it is for what I'm doing. And my overall plan here is like, okay, once I can get this in here and it's reasonably queryable, I can start deriving other things from the data. So like one thing I may do at some point, maybe in streams, I don't know, is I can just take a chunk of blocks, query them to pull the data out, and turn that into Parquet. And Parquet is columnar format. I can dump it into S3, query it directly out of S3 using Athena, or I can then take that Parquet and load it into something like ClickHouse and do like super fast analytic queries. But this XT database is sort of like a bootstrapping into being able to do those things more easily. I mean, I could also just, suck the data in another way, but just having an XT with being able to do data log queries is just a very flexible way to deal with it. Probably not entirely, computationally, that's probably not the optimal ingest path, but it's a very flexible ingest path, and as long as it's not intractable computationally or in terms of AWS costs, my time is the most valuable thing. So I think it will maximize the use of my time to pursue other applications of it, just because of that flexibility. Okay, let's wrap up here. So I'm sorry I didn't get to the tag stuff. I always just have a little bit more than I can actually do on my list, but hopefully the metabase exploration was interesting. I think this whole thing is starting to show its value in terms of being able to visualize the data. I think over the course of these streams, I've converged on a good format that's good for my applications. Hopefully there's some lesson in there in terms of just getting the data in, playing around with it, and learning what works for your application. What works for your application is probably different than what works for my application, but this seems like it's worked out pretty well. And yeah, I think I'll wrap it up there. So next week, probably we'll be showing some of this. I'll also do the thing at the beginning where I do an intro that just covers some general Arweave as a tool for collective intelligence types of topics. I anticipate that the next one will be shorter than the previous one. I think the previous one ended up being close to 40 minutes, which I know is still a lot for people to watch, but I laid down a lot of foundational ideas. I would like the next one to be less than that. 20 minutes seems like a good number in my head. Still a lot for a YouTube video, but it may be something where I can chunk it up even more. So there's like 3 topics I have in mind to cover, which I guess I'll just say them. If you're dedicated enough that you're watching these videos, there's no harm in revealing that ahead of time. So the things I want to cover basically is why I think immutability is a prerequisite for having an open annotation system for, I want to say the web, but like it's not for the web, it's for things that are stored on Arweave. So I think in Arweave you could have an open annotation system. I think you really can't build an open annotation system without immutability. And then also I think you need to have immutability and permanence. Yeah, I should say permanence too. Permanence I think is also essential for open annotation system. And then transclusion and backlinks. The backlinks one I think is a little harder to explain, but transclusion, I think that's a super simple case where like it's just obviously you can't do it without immutability and permanence. If you don't know what I'm talking about with backlinks and transclusion, that's fine. Show up next time and I'll explain them. If you do, I don't know, you can think about it for the next week of like, why do you actually need immutability to realize those at scale? And I guess I will just say that when I say at scale, I mean at scale as an open system. There are ways you can do these things in closed systems, walled gardens, without really strong immutability and permanence guarantees. But I think for an open system, it's absolutely necessary. I don't think you can do it without those guarantees. So, preview of next time. If you are dedicated enough to watch all these streams and hang on to the very end, there's your reward. And I hope that piques your interest, and I'll explore it next time and then do some coding again. All right, thanks. That is it for this week, and I'll talk to you folks next week.